Hello and welcome to the Optimize Show. I am David Mamano, your host. Today on the show, I have a Rochester legend. I have someone who's been our police chief, our mayor, New York's lieutenant governor, and now he's president and CEO of Rochester, New York Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Rochester himself, Bob Duffy. Bob, welcome to the Optimize Show.
David, thank you. Great to be here.
Really excited to have you here. You've done some great things in Rochester, really dedicated your life to serving Rochester, New York. I think, if somebody in Rochester hasn't heard your name, then they probably just moved here like a month ago. So thanks for, all that you've been doing for Rochester and New York State. So definitely when we started the Optimize Show, you were on the short list of must-have guests. So we appreciate your time today.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here.
In fact, you're so busy. We're supposed to have you here in the studio live, but we're doing this remote. So I appreciate you. At least we're making it happen. Yeah.
I would say post-COVID, the schedule and the intensity has gone up dramatically. So it's just say a few minutes ago, I grabbed a quick sandwich in the office. Off we go. It's meeting after meeting after meeting, pretty much. But this is really important. I really appreciate being asked.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to, quickly, I quickly, briefly mentioned some of your journey. Why don't you give us the scoop? How did Bob Duffy become the Bob Duffy that he is today?
Well, first of all, I'm very fortunate in many ways. I had great parents, a great family. I think a great upbringing. Grew up in the northwest part of Rochester, off Driving Park Avenue. We were far from wealthy. I never had a silver spoon. I think we were probably below that middle class ring. But you know what? We had dinners together, went to church every Sunday. I had two older brothers, had great family, great educational opportunities. My parents saved a lot of money. I went through Catholic schools, Holy Rosary and Aquinas, at a time when they really could not afford that. But they put three boys through it. And then ended up, was in college. I was playing basketball, came home one summer, worked for City Recreation, and a friend of mine who I work with, actually my supervisor, was taking the police test. So I was interested. My first two basketball coaches growing up in the neighborhood were both police officers with the RPD, and had a very positive impact with them in terms of relationships. So I took the test kind of as a lark with the person I work with. Scored well and was offered a job. So I had to quit my last year at school, up at a Division III school in New Hampshire. Came back. And I will say the police career was extraordinarily good for me in so many ways. I learned so much. I worked with and for great people in my police career. I had several mentors, a couple really stand out. I worked for a great community. The community here has just been terrific. And I've often said, the poorest neighborhoods in Rochester have the greatest people. And I look back at my career in the police department, that City Hall. Not only do I value them and respect them, but I would not be in these positions without them. I think their support over the years was tremendous. Helped me learn, helped me grow. But Dave, there's no special sauce. I say this. I do work hard. I have a great family today. I've been married 38 years to a beautiful wife. I have two daughters, two grandkids. But I've been very fortunate. I've been very lucky along the way. I'm a risk taker, so I've taken chances along my career path that I probably drove my wife crazy from time to time. But if it works out, great. If it didn't, it'd be a different story. But again, really blessed in so many ways, from family through work relationships, through people I work with. Rep today, I have a Chamber of Commerce. I work with a great team every day. I work for a great board led by Rob Sands and Marty Musey. And just again, if you were to ask me, I don't have a bad day. I think every day it's a great day getting up and coming to work. And I think I'm a testament to how others can shape people's lives, from coaches to teachers, family, coworkers, leaders that you work for, the impact that people can have on others. And I'm a benefit of those impacts over many years.
Well, thank you for that. And I would say, with the Optimize Show, we're always talking about optimizing things. I think you've optimized the Rochester experience, right? I mean, you said you became a police officer. I mean, you became police chief, you became mayor of Rochester, and then you became lieutenant governor, and now what the perfect role for you at this time is president and CEO of the Rochester Chamber of Commerce. So if anybody has optimized the Rochester, New York experience, it's been Bob Duffy, and you made a great impact. And I think about, all those roles have surrounded you with really some of the top leaders in Rochester and New York State, right? You just mentioned Rob Sands and Marty Musi. I mean, they're titans of their industries, right? And you get to hang with all these incredibly smart, talented, and successful people. And how has that affected your leadership to be the leader that you want to be?
Well, it's a great question, Dave. I think being around people, I'm a lifelong learner. So I read a lot, but I also observe a lot. And having worked with some super smart people, you learn every day. You evolve. We all change over time. We all grow and change. And maybe, the Bob Duffy at 21 is very different from the Bob Duffy today, because just based on all these experiences. In the police department, as I mentioned, I work for great people. One of the biggest mentors I had was a man named Bob Craig, who was a retired deputy chief, had a huge impact on my career. Going into police chief, I credit Bob Warshaw, former police chief that I worked alongside. It was terrific for 4 years. Bill Johnson, former Mayor Bill Johnson, was the best mayor a police chief could work for. I worked for the mayor. I was his chief for 7 years. He was great to work with. And then going into City Hall, when I ran for mayor, I did not want to run for mayor. It was not my intention. I was kind of nudged by a number of local leaders. I was invited to a dinner one night over in the Park Avenue neighborhood, and one by one, they went around, asked me to run for mayor. That was a total shock. I walked to the car with my wife that night. She said 3 words. The first one was no. The third one was way, and I'll let you figure out that long, middle, hard consonant sound word in the middle, because it was not something that I ever thought I would get into in terms of going into politics. It's not something I just never wanted that. But I made a decision a few months down the road, and it was a great experience. And going back to your point about talent, when I came in as mayor, I'm proud to say this, I never asked anybody who I hired what party they were affiliated with. I didn't care about that. I wanted the best people, and I really am proud of the team that I brought together. I believe in hiring people and having people around you who are better, smarter, more experienced. I'm blessed with a very small ego, and I want people around me who are high-powered. I have no hesitancy to lead. I have no problem doing that. But I also have learned over the years, I think from a police career where it's much more regimented to now where I try to perhaps we establish goals at the beginning of the year, but try to stay out of people's way, hold them accountable. We have a great team here, but help along the way. Don't get in. I don't micromanage. I probably did at some points in my career. I don't now. I've learned when you have really good people, you don't have to micromanage. And you mentioned before culture. It's really fascinating. Being in a civil service environment, being in a heavily unionized environment through a big part of my career, it is hard to do things in that sector because you have to negotiate, even if you give a benefit. Here, where I am now, we don't have to. We can really take care of our employees, so we don't have to negotiate that. And part of it is when people are loyal to the organization has to be just as loyal back to them. And we have great flexibility. We're probably a little more than half remote right now. We are child friendly. We have teammates who bring kids to work. That's okay. We have plenty of room. They walk around, they play. We have playrooms. We have a young mom who is a tireless worker who wheels her baby down to the lactation room a couple of times a day, and we support that. To be childcare with that expense, it's really difficult. We are pet friendly. We have a couple of times we have dogs running the hallway here, as long as they're cleaned up after. But I think part of the culture is meeting people where they are. Taking advantage of the great brain power that you have, letting people really run with projects and lead. And, one thing I pride myself in, I don't like taking credit for anything. I cringe when I see people taking credit publicly for things that I even know they probably didn't really do. Others help along the way, but they take credit for that. You give credit to others, and the way you may get credit is through others, through their successes and their work. And that's, I'm no expert on culture, but I think if you set a tone, I've never had a scandal in my entire career. I don't expect to have one ever. I'm stickler for certain things. When it comes to integrity and honesty, how we run things, there to me, no questions, no gray areas with those things. When it comes to employees and being for them and really meeting them where they need you to meet them and help them, I'm all for being flexible. And what I've seen here, we have 41 employees. We have a very, very low rate of people leaving here because, we work with great people every day. I love coming to work. I look forward to it. I like the people we have here. They work hard. They're great folks. And, I think part of it is just a give and take. We're not perfect by any stretch, but listening and learning and making sure that we support our teammates as best we can, I think is a pretty good recipe for building a culture.
No, that's great. Thanks for sharing what you've been doing at the chamber, which is, a different chamber than it was 10 years ago, right? I don't think there was, babies and dogs 10 years ago at the chamber. So you definitely have, elevated, we'll say, the culture there to be just more adaptive to today's world. It's a different world, right? I mean, when I was growing up, my dad worked for Kodak, as many people did back in the day, and he was gone by 7, and he came back at 6. And that was it. He never, if I had a game or a play during the day, unfortunately my dad wasn't there. He was at work, right? And now, with the flex schedules, you're definitely able to kind of intertwine personal and professional in a much more elevated way.
Dave, that's a great point. I go back probably my police chief time in the city hall. I missed a lot of dinners because I was in early and in late, but I had at least one of my daughters played sports. I never missed a sporting event. I didn't miss a play or a dance recital. I always showed up for those and made sure I was there. Here at the chamber, one of the things, family first. I've had at least 2 employees go through some serious cancer surgeries. We've not used paid family leave. We keep them whole. We work with them, support them. We've had people with injuries and sicknesses in their families with parents, grandparents, kids. We support them. And I think in a different environment, say in a civil service, highly regulated environment, you couldn't do that. In the private sector, we can. And I do think that's a way of building support and loyalty for your workforce, because I just believe family first. And if somebody is successful at home, if they're happy at home, if they're happy at work, they're great to our customers. It's a win-win all the way around. So again, we're not perfect. Certainly we always look to improve, and we have a 6-month meeting tomorrow morning where we go through our 6-month metrics. Where are we? How far away from our goals? Are we on track or not? And we're pretty meticulous about that. But I do think having a strong culture, having flexibility, especially post-COVID, where people don't want to be in the office 8 to 5 or 8 to 6. And my feeling is this: I'm very good with remote work. Some of our team can't work remote. We have a team on finance. They're doing financial records, writing checks. I'm here pretty much every day. Probably maybe a little bit less than half are here every day. But I look at the metrics and the results too. If the results were down, we'd make adjustments. When people have flexibility but are just knocking it out of the park with their results, I think it's a pretty good equation for success. So I've learned one thing: when things are going well, don't tinker too much with it. Keep looking ahead. And I think, especially in your experience with business, you are innovative. We have to be continually innovating, looking at the future. What are the next trends? And that's why we have a nice combination of established teammates here who've been here for 15, 20, 22 years. We have some very young, coming out of local universities and colleges, super talented, high energy. So it's a great combination with a culture internally of that young, hard charging, and sometimes the more experienced, mature, but longer serving employees. And I think the synergies between both have been outstanding.
No, that's a fantastic point to think about. That I think 10 plus years ago, business leaders were judging a lot of performance based on the number of hours. And what those hours were, like you said, 8 to 5, 8 to 6, whatever. And I see a big trend the past few years that judging on results, judging on performance, right? Like analyzing, is it working? Are the metrics being met? And, if you're working at 10 p.m. at night because that's that's when you feel alive and that's when you get your work done better, then great. I don't care when you work. as long as it's getting done. And I see that's what you're doing over there.
Dave, here's my philosophy. And I'll example. Say you're working on our team. I say, Dave, we have a big project. It's going to be due tomorrow afternoon at 3:00. It's a last minute. Can you jump on this? You say, Bob, I'd love to, but I have tickets to a concert tonight. I have to go. I'm like, Dave, that's fine. If I were to say, Dave, no, you can't go to the concert. You have to be here and work. You might work here, but you'd be looking for a new job within a week because you'd be upset that this big event you want to go to, maybe with family or friends, I'm saying no to. But if I say, Dave, whatever you do, great, enjoy the concert. As long as you have this done by 3:00 tomorrow afternoon, hey, we're okay. And I'll guarantee you'll go to that concert. You'll be probably in at 4:00 in the morning. You'll get that done. But I mean, I think you just meet people where they are. You let them have their life, but also, I mean, I think the goals of the organization have to mesh with their lives as well. And it's so different from the environment I grew up and worked in, which was very regimented. When I was a police chief, I wanted to give police officers a day off for exceptional work. I couldn't just do that. If you were a police officer, I could say, Dave, great job last night. Love what you did. You solved this great crime. You did a great thing for the neighborhood. I'm going to give you an extra vacation day. I had to negotiate that with the union. Now, fortunately, the union president certainly at that time was Ron Evangelista. Ron was very good. We negotiated doing that, but I couldn't just do that. Where in a private sector, you have much more flexibility. And I do believe today, if you do not meet your teammates, employees where they are, they have choices and they'll leave. And believe you me, with 6,000 plus local job openings in Rochester, there's a lot of choices available. So you have to treat your people well and with respect. We have very few issues that pop up. And I think we do have some, and we're resolving as they come up. We try to resolve them. And a lot of it is personality, it's style, that type of thing. But overall, I think being there, and if people need something, they want to take off. It's summertime. I'm a big believer. Hey, we get maybe 3 months of great weather. Enjoy it, do things. But I find that when you give people flexibility and they're of the caliber that you expect them to be, they don't cheat the system. They'll use that flexibility if they come back and work 10 times as hard to get things done. And I think that's just something that I've seen here, and I'm very proud of them. I'm proud of our team. I'm proud of the way they accomplish their goals. And every year, I get together with Rob Sands and Marty Musey and our finance committee, and we go through the results. And 7 years in a row, we've had extraordinary results, and in a very tough, challenging, changing environment. And I don't think a lot of chambers of commerce could say that, but what we do a lot of things behind the scenes. I just will say, I use a Jim Collins comment from Good to Great: "We're the dog that doesn't bark." Behind the scenes, we get things done. We have relationships, not just me, but we have several teammates with very deep relationships. We try to get things done. Could be local, state, federal government, local business. It could be, a number of things, permits, passports, you name it. Things that people need every day. We work very hard to get legislation. That's a very tough state sometimes with certain legislation for business. We don't bat 1,000. We don't bat 500, but some years we bat maybe 350 to 400, which is not bad. But in today's environment, every success you can get, you should take and celebrate. But we do those things behind the scenes. As I said earlier, we don't get up and have headlines. This is what we do. I'm not a selfie person. Rarely you see me in a selfie anywhere, or my picture. I try and stay out of pictures. Highlight other people, give them credit, put them out front. And I think that's how you grow an organization, and that's how you strengthen a culture.
That's great. And what I'm hearing from you is another Jim Collins kind of philosophy, is that if you hire A players, and then as Jim would say, have them on the right bus and the right seats, that you can give them the flexibility to go to that concert, to go to that softball game, and they still will get the job done. A players will get the job done if you, like you said, are meeting them where they are. And if they're not, then that's when you have to say, is this the right person for the role? But if you have A players, then they will make it work for the organization if you make it work for them.
Dave, I think we're both very similar in this vein, and correct me if I'm wrong. If I were to say, Dave, I want you to do this project, but I want you to do it this way, do this, and this, and then get back to me, you'll throw your hands up in the air, like, let me do it. If I were to say, Dave, take care of this project, I'm faith you'll do a great job, get back to me in 7 days with it, I think you'll excel at that. I never liked being told how to do something unless I wanted to learn. If it was a skill I didn't have, I would certainly sit and listen and learn and try and pick up. But I honestly believe I want to do things. I may have a different style than you, but we'll both get it done the same way. So let people, be themselves, get things done, and help them. Be there to help them, but don't tell them what to do. Just tell them what you want accomplished. And that's another thing that I go back in time. We've all gone through different renditions of managers and management philosophies. And I've often said I've worked for great bosses and maybe not so great bosses, but I've learned the same from both. I've learned what to do, what not to do. And I've always found that if people trusted you, if somebody trusted me, I would never, ever breach that trust. If somebody did trust me, I would wonder why. It would certainly be cause for concern, but you have to trust somebody. And if you can't trust somebody, they should not be on your team.
Yeah, there's a great lesson there in the beginning of what you were saying. I learned, through some leadership lessons that if you do tell, like you ask for something and you tell them how you want it done, you're basically, framing it, right? Here's how I want it done. And you're right. Most people don't like that. Most people want to, have the creativity to put their fingerprint, on the role of what you asked them to do on the project, right? And so just to kind of give them an idea of what you're looking for, but let them be creative. And then as a leader, you don't have to have all the ideas. You don't have to come up with all the solutions. Let your team bring things to the next level. And I ran Next Step for a number of years. Towards the end, I finally learned the best question to ask my team as a leader, and it's not telling them what to do, or the best question was, "How can I support you today?"
Yep, exactly. Yep, exactly it. And I think that is such a great transition in leadership that we've seen over the years and decades. And I go back when I was a police chief. Now, I learned one thing. Going up the ranks, you have a lot of friends and you play sports and you're at barbecues. The higher up you go, all of a sudden it's very different. And I never thought I would be chief. And just again, very fortunate to be there. But that was a phenomenal job. And I used to work. We had 7 sections at that time. I used to work a week in each section. I would go out and ride along with police officers. It would probably be nervous all the way, but I would ask a lot of questions. I learned so much. I learned that sometimes the cops on the street had these cars that were high mileage and run down, but maybe the lieutenant in the office had the brand new car. Just one of those things. I learned about equipment, and I'd go back to my team and you would listen and understand from their perspective. It was not unusual. I'd be running through backyards at 1 o'clock in the morning with some police officers chasing people. I'm always been an action junkie, but I think they like to see you come and be interested. They like to see you leave, and so there's not as much stress. But I learned so much, and you know what? And any given day, they would either like you or hate you depending on your decisions, and I accept that. But I've had great respect for police officers, and you know what? It's a profession like few others that what they go through to get in the scrutiny is unbelievable. And yes, they make mistakes. They're human, but what they are faced with day in, day out is just extraordinary. And those who criticize, those who belittle them, have no idea what they deal with every single day. And I always tell people, go out and hop in a car, ride with an officer for 8 hours, and just watch and listen and tell me what you think, because it really does change your attitude. It's a very, very difficult job, made much more difficult today, thanks to many people, some elected officials and others in other aspects of our lives. But you see the results of demoralizing law enforcement across this country, not fixing a problem, but demoralizing a profession, trying to tear down an institution. And the results that we see are not pretty. And there's an old saying, the pendulum swings both ways. It may go to extreme. It comes back to rest in the middle. And I think people right now are seeing the lack of success, of really in many ways, the disappointment in the results of not only legislation, but sometimes the leadership or lack thereof. And I do think we have to rebuild this back up. If you go back in time, I was not a Vietnam era veteran. I was not a veteran at all, but I was too young for the draft for the Vietnam War. But the way the Vietnam veterans were treated coming back to this country, we demoralized those soldiers back then. They were cursed, spat upon, they were shamed. And then all of a sudden, the country down the road, they were educated and they began to really honor them. And I would guarantee a lot of the stress and mental health issues suffered by Vietnam veterans, some of that comes from their treatment. And I would say it's not much different from police officers or teachers, any institution that we need, nurses, doctors. Look at what healthcare went through during COVID. When they are in any way diminished or not treated respectfully, I think you see the results on that. And I think leaders at all levels should learn from some of the mistakes over the last few years and hopefully work hard to correct them.
Yeah, I mean, what a great way to end the show here. And if I'm hearing you, I think whether you're in the police force or a business, whatever organization you're in order to optimize engagement, you have to remember that a person's greatest need is to be appreciated. Whether you're a police officer, a Vietnam veteran, or have a job at a company, right? And I think that's kind of like the number one core rule is just let your team feel appreciated for a job well done.
Dave, I agree. And you know what? Recognizing people could be a note card, a phone call, an email. Recognizing and thanking people. If you get great service at a restaurant or a hotel, thank them. People sometimes feel so disrespected nowadays that to hear a thank you, it's almost like they're taken aback. And my mother and father taught me one thing: respect. And there was never a slur in our house in any way, shape, or form. We were taught to respect everybody, to be respectful. I'm on social media. You never see me criticizing people on Twitter. I don't do that. If I have something to say, I'll say it privately. I don't say it on social media. And I think social media, and I try as best I can to be positive, to highlight the good things about this community and this region, even though sometimes it's frustrating with some of the things you see going on every day in the news. But that said, our community, even with its struggles today, is great. And there's the issues we face are relatively a small number of people creating a large number of the problems. I think the problems today is we don't deal with that small number effectively. And if in a world, if there are no consequences, behaviors don't change. And there's an old saying, what you allow will continue. And I think that happens. That's for any manager, from a first line supervisor to a CEO, to a mayor, a county executive, a governor, a president. I think it applies. And, in the end, I think we have to enact policies that benefit everybody, not just the loudest advocates. And I just hope that we get to that point. And I do think government can learn a lot from business as well. And business can learn from government. But I think that the way things are being done, I see so many success stories in business today. Look at Wegmans, Paychex, Constellation Brands, all the companies around here. We have great leaders locally. We have great teammates, great systems. And I think part of it is the leadership that we have, the transitions. These are not only companies creating great jobs and economic growth, but they're creating great organizations that give back so much to this community and region. The philanthropy here is tremendous. The United Way contributions probably per capita best in the country. And I just think it reinforces that don't get down in this community or this state. We have so much to be proud of. Let's just fix the things that are going wrong and keep the things that are going well. And majority of what we see today are going very well.
I love it. Bob Duffy, thank you so much for your time and sharing all your great thoughts and philosophies and strategies with us today. Truly appreciate it. And we'll have you back on the show. But until then, I wish you massive continued success in what you're doing.
Dave, I thank you. And listen, I credit you too. You are a great innovator, a great salesperson in many ways. I just have always been one who admires what you do. You have a long history of success. You're always happy. You're always upbeat. You're always positive. And that's hard to do in today's world. I commend you for that because you exude this positive energy, which I think is needed today more than ever. So thank you.
I joke that God blessed me with a little extra serotonin, so I'll give him some credit.
Thanks, Dave. You have a great day.
All right. Thanks, Bob, and thank you, everybody, for watching The Optimized Show. Every Wednesday morning, a new show. Appreciate you. Make sure to watch again and stay awesome.